Okay, let's start. Okay. Mitzvas Aseh Pevov. Mitzvah Ashisha Ushmonim. He shetzivonu liftois ma shenischadish boimum ma shenofal boimum. We have to understand this nischadish and nofal. Okay. Mina kadoshim v'yotze l'chulin. So it means that with pidyon, it's yotze l'chulin. Okay? And then it says, v'yemuto or umuto, that's kapach, this is no yiyeh, but it is like the yiyeh does exist in other places in Rambam, maybe not here. Muta lishchoit oisai ula'ochloi. The nusach here is very odd, and we'll try before just to brush up and see what the words mean. But offhand, it's a sipur dvorim. The Ram's telling you a story. What is the mitzvah? The mitzvah is shetzivonu liftois. Mash nischadish boimum and akadoshim. V'yetzei l'chulin. Through the pidyon. V'yamuta umuta lishchait oisei l'ochloi. Why is that a part of the nusach HaMitzvah? It's very odd. V'yamuta lishchait oisei l'ochloi. V'amar yis'ale rak b'chol avas nafshecho Tizbach v'yochalta boso. Kibirkas Hashem Elokecho. Kibirkas Hashem Elokecho. B'loshen Sifri, Rach b'chol avas nafshecho Tizbach, Eino medaber el psul mukdoshim, sheyiftu. Because looking at the pasuk, we know nothing that this is talking about Psul Mukdoshim. Okay? And it's not like Psul Mukdoshim, it means Psul Mukdoshim Sheyiftu. And then let's just try to understand different words, and then we'll try to understand what he's saying exactly. Now, She Nischadesh Nofal, Nofal Boimum, we talk about a mum kavua, which you could be paid on, because a mum kavua, a mum oive, you can't be paid there, and there's certain mumim kavuim which you also need. I'm not getting about zoke and mizuam and chayla, but a mum kavua which can be paid on. That's what we're talking about, and the mitzvah is to be paid. Now, the reason why it says nofal boy mum, because if it's a Baal Mum Me'ikora, let's just see the Lashon Rambam. He says in Perik Aleph V'chus Isui Mizbeach Halacha Yud U'mitzvah Aseh Hu Liftois Kochim Shenoilad Behem Mum. Again, it's Noilad Behem Mum. It was a Kodesh, and then it was Noilad Behem Mum. V'yetzu l'chul v'yochul Shneim Arach B'chol Abbas Nafshech Tizbah V'yachalta B'osa. V'yishmu Lamdu because if it's kodam mumum legdesham, there's no kedush saguf, there's no kedush domim, and the mitzvah of pidyon is to be mafkir the kedush saguf. And I'll tell you something. I don't know how much is negeya. It's not clear in Rishayim it's like that. Rab Chaim assumed that pidyon and Kedush Saguf is a Tata D'Sasre. Because Kedush Saguf means there's no pidyon. And so you couldn't imagine being makdish a behema sheish bo mum b'kedusha guf. Because what you're doing is you're making a kedusha guf, which is by definition not a kedusha guf. Kedusha guf means there's no pidyon. Okay? So the mitzvah is that after it was kedusha guf, a mum a mum was nofal boy, and that is mafkia ki'ilu at a certain extent to kedusha guf. And the test that has kedusha guf, that is tmula, even on psul mukdashim. Okay. So nofal boy mum, in other words, the mitzvah of pidyon is that a behema which lechatchila was kedusha guf, and it had a mum which is nitfas lapidyon, and the mitzvah is to be paid there. Okay. So now we have a start. Next step. What does it mean now? V'yiyeh muta u'muta lishchait oisai u'la'ochlai. When you read this, you don't get the impression that the shechita and the achila are part of the mitzvah, because he only says that there's a heter to do a shechita and to eat it. But if it's only a heter, then l'chayra it's sipur dvarim ba'alma. And if it's sipur dvarim ba'alma, l'chayra there's no place in the nusach HaMitzvah. So that's what we have in front of us. And this is not only an isolated phenomenon over here, it's the same nusach in Mishnah Torah, in Perek Aleph Halacha Yud Mitzvas Aseh who liftois kochim shel be'emum v'yetzu l'chulin v'yochlu. See here, liftois v'yochlu. So is he telling you? What's he saying v'yochlu? V'yochlu means that there's a mitzvah to eat it. There's dinim that you have to eat the psul mukdashim. Shenema b'piyah shmuel lamdu shakos b'dav psul mukdashim sheyifta. That you should be paid it. In Minyan HaKotze, it says liftos kochim b'alei mumim v'yiyu muton lachila, which is exactly like he has over here. Shenema rak b'chol avas nafshecho tizbach v'yochalta bosa. Shu alamdu she'enu medaber psul mukdashim sheyifta. And the Ram always brings the pasuk of v'yochalta bosa. So, but why does he bring it in the pasuk? Is it nogei the mitzvah? But he's talking about it in the nusach HaMitzvah. We don't know what's going on. But l'chayr the tzivu is liftais. He doesn't quote a tzivu in the pasuk as tizbach rach b'chol avas nafshcha tibach v'chalta bosa. It doesn't say it's the tzivu to do the shechita. And the Ram, the Protei Mitzvahs, in the beginning of Hilchos Yisurim Mizbeach, he says liftais psul mukdashim. And there's no mention at all of achila. So a priori, the a priori, I would have said that it could be that the v'yiyeh muta lishchait oisai ula'ochloi is discussing the pidyon. The pidyon has to be amanas to do a shechita and achila. And that's ein poiden. The ein poiden is hakochim lachilum leklovim That's an Isa, okay? But here we're not talking about an Isa, or the mitzvah of pidyon is to be paid there. It could be that's an Isa. Ain't paid, it could be an Mitzvas Aseh. But the paidness hakochim, it should be lishchayraisam ulachon. That should be what the pidyon is. But the mitzvah is the pidyon. And it's a chiddush over here. Even though the Ram says v'yetzei l'chulin, right? V'yetzei l'chulin is a little bit odd because after pidyon, it's a dayan b'ktushasai for the Isa of Gizav Avodah. The Ram in Hilchos Mila Perek Avoloch Hazayin and Tes Kol Kochi Mizbeach Ben Kochi Kochim Ben Kochi Kalam Asum B'Gizav Avodah Shnem Lo Yisavo B'Chol Sharecho Lo Yisogos B'Chol Tzarecho Hu Adin Shar Kochim Behemas Hektish Shenofo Boimum V'Niftis Kmo Shbianu Eino Mutes B'Gizav Avodah V'Arihi B'Isura Ad Shitishochet Nishchato Acha Pidyono Chutshu B'Achilo. So the shechita is part of the matir, and there's an isa gisav avodah. But the Ram says over here, v'yetzei l'chulin. It's a very strange expression, v'yetzei l'chulin. Yetzei l'chulin, it means that with shechita it will go out l'chulin, but v'yetzei l'chulin, it's a little strange. And also, it's still like a tmura, and tmura depends on kedusha guf. The Ram in Perek Gimel Hilchos Tmura Halacha Dalet. Hamakdish balas mum oiver, v'eno tzorach loima tmima, v'achkach noiled bo mum kavua, v'niftis, v'heimir bo. So there's a pidyon after kedusha guf, and there's a tmura. V'heimir bo achesh niftis, harizu tmura, v'eno kreva. It means the Eino Niftis, Elamanicha Chetomus. It's a Kedusha Dechuya. Eino Krevi B'nei Shabor Mikoy Kedusha Dechuya. The Eino Niftis, Shein B'chor Kedusha Asa Likvais Pidyona. So it's a quasi, the pidyon is Mafkia mixes Kedusha, but it's not the V'yetzei L'chulin. It's the V'yetzei L'chulin only together with the Zvicha. So the Lush is a little odd. See, if you say, let's just understand what happened over here. So what's pshuto shel mikra without the sifri? The pshuto shel mikra is rak b'chol avas nafshecha tizbach v'yochalta. That it means there's a heter of achila on this behemoth, whatever it is, with shechita. That's all it says. And there's no mitzvah per se. And the pidyon that we understand from the Pirush Makubal, which is in this Sifri, Tizbach, Eino Medaber Psum Gdosha Sheyiftu. Okay. So now, here's an interesting thing. Let's understand the pasuk without the Pirush Makubal. Let's understand the pasuk with the Pirush Makubal. I mean the following. In the pasuk by itself, Rak b'chol avas nafshecha tizbach v'chalta, we have no clue what we're talking about. At your leisure, at your want, at your desire, you're allowed to do a shechita and achila. Okay. And even if you're talking about that it was after pidyon, there's no mitzvah over here, because there's no, the Shiur Shmini says you need a tzivui, a poel tzivui, okay? You need a verb in the imperative form. But you understand yourself, There's no verb in the imperative form over here. It just tells you about a shechita. And the shechita doesn't seem to be a mitzvah. It's just that it's mutar b'achila through the shechita. And the pidyon has to be for achila, okay? But you have a priori a pasuk telling you a heter, okay? Derech agav, you do not find this mitzvah in the Kadmonim. I did not find it, maybe I missed it, in the Bahag. I did not find it in the Sefer of Sadigoin, the Sefer HaMitzvos Sadigoin. And I just want to say there's something amazing going on over here. Because if you read this without the Pirush Mekubal, there's no expression of a mitzvah in Torah Shebiksav. Because if you would have said the mitzvah is Tizbach, which maybe he's referring to, he doesn't mention the Zvicha in any place. He quotes the pasuk, but the best that he does in Mishnah Torah, he says, V'yetzu l'chul and v'yochlu. But it doesn't say, he doesn't even mention the shechita. So a priori, you have a pasuk which in Pshuto Shal Mikra is not a tzivur. And maybe for that reason, Rav Sadi Goin doesn't quote it in Minyan HaMitzvos. And the whole mitzvah is only because of the Pirush Mekubal. So, if that's correct, you have a very important thing here. Because the Rambam leaves you in a quandary when he has it. There's a Chuvas Rambam where he says there's only 3 or 4 Pirushim Mekubalim. When he was asked about Kiddushin, the Kiddushay Kesef, what does he mean? It's the Rabbana, whatever it is. So I always thought, and I see that others interpret like that the Rambam is saying that there are only 3 or 4 Pirushim Mekubalim, that the mitzvah is built solely on the Pirushim Mekubal. Without the Pirushim Mekubal, you don't have a mitzvah. The Pirushim Mekubal sometimes can redefine the mitzvah, can expand the mitzvah, could do something about the mitzvah. But here, the mitzvah only exists in as much as a Pirushim Mekubal. Okay? And that is the chayur we have over here. If you read the Rambam correctly, he doesn't. I would see the question is, what's he saying? It's a very strange nusach. He shetzivonu liftois, of the verb of the tzivui is pediyah. And pediyah is not mentioned in the pasuk. It only says, if you look at the lashon of Pirush Mekubal, it's not that we're talking about Psulim Mukdashim. The Pirush Mekubal has in it with a tzivui. It says, Eino medaber ela b'psulim mukdashim sheyiftu. It means the tzivui only exists in as much the Pirush Mekubal. So then it comes out an amazing thing that we're making a mitzvah completely based on a Pirush Mekubal. Okay? Next. L'cheira, it's a double portion. The mitzvah is not because of pidyon, is because the behemoth was oimed lemizbeach, and now is not for boimum, or it's because the behemoth had kedusha guf, and the mitzvah is to be mafkir the kedusha guf and making it to kushet dechuya through the pidyon. So if it's the latter, and there's no discussion over here that the behemoth originally was oimed lemizbeach or was a mitzvah of mizbeach. So I would have assumed that this mitzvah even applies to Mitzvas Aseh. That's what I would assume. Okay. That is mitzvah number one. Now, next one. Each one of them are very, very interesting and new insights into mitzvahs, and the last mitzvah is a new insight into Shirish Beis, that the Ram says mitzvahs are Torah shebiksav, and however a Pirush Makubal can make a mitzvah, and here's an example of the Pirush Makubal making a mitzvah. Now, Pei Zayin. And here, some Arabic will be important, and we'll see as it goes. VaMitzvah hasheva ushmonim hi shetzivonu lihiyois hatmura kodesh. Now, this lihiyois is to be, okay? There is a very strange verb conjugation over here of this verb, and the verb is bekom, which is basically found, I think I'm not mistaken, about 5 times. I discussed this once with you, about 5 times in Minyan HaMitzvos. And the literal translation of the bekom is in the state of, okay? In the state of. So there's something amazing over here. Here again, there's no verb. The mitzvah is to be in the state of Tmura. There's no verb. It's amazing. How does this square with Shirish Shmini, which basically says that mitzvahs are imperatives, either a command to do something or a command to refrain from something. And here, in the nusach of the mitzvah, it's bikom. It's to be in the state of something. B'matzav shel. Without any verb conjugation. See, sometimes we have, an imperative is go, jump, okay? In the Hebrew, sometimes you can have a verb in the future, which we'll discuss this a little bit much more in a time in the future, about maybe 10 mitzvahs from now, whatever it is. But there is something you can have in the third person in the future, yiyeh. And for example, you have lo yiyeh kekoich vadosoi. The Ram is ready to accept that there should have been an ashara, but it doesn't mean that it's an ashara. It's just a sipur dvorim. The word yiyeh could be it should be, which is an imperative, but it's not in the imperative form. It's not a command, but at least you have an imperative, which you can interpret as a command. Here what you have is V'hoya hu usmoso yiyeh kodesh. The Rambam interprets that the verb form, I would have done, he doesn't make me, I don't know why he does this. The verb form is yiyeh, it should be, which could be an imperative, okay? And what he does is that's not the case, and that the translator said liyos, but it's not a liyos that we understand liyos, it's to be in the matzav of. And in the phraseology, there's no command. It's an amazing thing. It means, and we'll have to discuss this in Mitzvah Shem, it will probably be a whole shiur. We get to Mitzvah Sadi Hey, Sadi Vav, what the relationship between minyan and mitzvahs and commands are. But here, a priori, if you take the Arabic seriously, even though in the Torah there's a verb of command, in the way we understand the mitzvah, it's a state. And it's still a mitzvah. So, and the question is also, why did the Rambam do this? What's so bad about, he's creating problems when he could have said Yiyah is in the third person, and that's where it should be, and it's it's an imperative form. And then there's another question: what exactly is the mitzvah? What are you supposed to do? Okay. Truth is, when I was learning Chulin with the Rav, I think he was struggling with this, and he said certain things I'm not going to discuss now, but I think he was struggling with this point, because from what I see, what he said, it doesn't make any sense that this was not an issue which he was trying to deal with. Well, let's just see what happens. Let's further. Ubebeir Amru Birosh Meseches or Betchilas Meseches Tmura Ki Amroi Yis'ale Lo Yimirenu He Mitzvas Aseh Shenitek Laseh. The lav of lo yimirenu is a lo yisaseh shenitek laseh. See, here again, there's something very odd, because we are brought up when we learn the third perek in Makis or on other places in Shas where this is discussed. What exactly happens when you have a lav which basically should engender a chiyuv malchus? If it's nitak laseh, we say zein loiken alav. So a priori, a discussion of lav shenitak laseh should be in the ashoris, not in the Mitzvas Aseh. Why is the Rambam telling you Gmor Tmura that the lav of Lo Yimirenu is a lav in the Laseh? So the answer is very simple. That the Rambam learns lav hanitak laseh, it means that in Averes halav, which is mechayiv and a Mitzvas Aseh, that the ashora is mechayiv a Mitzvas Aseh. So if it's nitak laseh, it means there is a Mitzvas Aseh. And the Ram is trying to prove that the Aseh, the Bohoya, who Usmurasa Yeh Kodesh, is a Mitzvah Aseh. And the only way he can prove it is the Lashon of Gmor Tmura, that the Gemara calls it a lav nitil aseh. The Omru Harei Meimar the lav shenitil asehu, and the Gemara has such a lashon. It's a lav nitil aseh, so it means there is a mitzvah aseh boy Mitzvas Aseh kodesh. V'shom nema gam king and this is very interesting. But tam hayos hameim eloike. It's a very strange thing. That even though it's a lav and nittel aseh, you chayiv malchus. So what does all this mean? Shuhu lav and nittel aseh, amru, the Matikya Shmua said, Loi osi aseh bi-oka trei lavim. The pshat in lav and nittel aseh is an akira of a lav. It's menatek. It's an akira of a lav, but it's the aseh that does it. So it means kloima sha'aso mitmura nichpeles pamayim. It said twice in the Torah. Lo yachlifenu v'lo yomei oisai. Ubo aseh echad v'hu v'hoya hu usmosa yakodesh. Hine hispayim masher otzim. Okay. So what does it mean that and one aseh is not oiketu lavim? So some Rishonim learn, Tesis, whatever, we'll see, not a gay really for us now. Then instead of getting 80 malchus, you get 40. It can't be oike 2 lavim, it's only oike 1 lav. Okay? But the Ram doesn't learn like that. The Ram learns that it's a shiurim. If we recall in Shiur Chi'i, the Ram said that a lav, which is nichbal chizuk, is a mochomadik lav. And with the Gemara, in the Ram only counts in minyan HaMitzvos 1 lav of lo yachlifen of lo yomi oisai. And the Ram says the reason why you only get 1 malchus is because you get malchus according to Yonei HaTeira. And if it's 1 lav in minyan, you only get 1 malchus. And the reason why the lav is not oiker is because it's a lav chomo. Lo yachlifen v'lo yomei oisai. Because it was nichpal. This is an amazing question then. It's almost like a charade. It's a game. So what did the Matikya Shmua say is lav nittel aseh? Because before lav nittel aseh and after lav nittel aseh, you get the same malchus as if nothing happened. Because there's a lav and you get malchus. So I say it's lav nittel aseh. So the answer is lo oker chad aseh v'oker trei lave. Okay, so you're back to where you started. So it didn't do anything. It's an amazing thing. So the only thing that happens over here, and Chazal, and according to the Rambam, the Taimei, that the Matikya Shmua tell you things about minyan HaMitzvos, the whole purpose of saying this alav nittel aseh is only to tell you that it's a mitzvah aseh. Okay. So the Rambam. So Bekitzi is the whole Chazal, and that's where he's going and quoting with Gemara here and there. The whole Lav Nittel Aseh is telling you it's a mitzvah minyan HaMitzvos. But on the other hand, what is the mitzvah? What's the oiker? What's the mitzvah? The okatre, what's the mitzvah? So the Ram says at the end over here, V'hinei hisboyer mashe ratzinu. Good. We came to the conclusion there's an aseh. Ukfor hisba'aru dinei mitzvazu b'meseches tmura. Kloima. Now he's telling you what the dinim of Tmur. What are the dinim of Tmur? So here, is like this. It says, Heich tiskayim, okay, veheich lo tiskayim, or eich tiskayim, veheich lo tiskayim, uma dino, veheich krevo, or eich tikorev, okay? Correct? So what's he telling you? These are the Dinei HaMitzvah. So I thought, you see, again, keep in mind the other question. The question is, what is bothering the Rambam that he has to say the bikon over here, that he has to say the mitzvah is to be in the state of? And I think what the Rambam is saying is basically the Kedusha.
That would be, yeah.
The Kedusha.
You want me to, you want to go?
The Kedusha of the Tmura is Memela. When I say Zu Tachazu or Zu Tmurazu, the Kedusha either is Memela or it's my Dibur. It's a Shaila the Rav used to learn whether B'dibur or B'kamaisa, or that Meima is one of the three Lavim, that even though there's no Maisa, there's Malchus, but whatever it is, it's either through my Dibur, it's a Muslim Memela. The Rabbeinu Shalom makes it Tmura. So the Tmura is when I violate the Lav. So what's the Aseh? What am I supposed to do? So I think what the Rambam is telling you is the Kedusha Memela. So there's really nothing to do Yihya Kodesh, but the Yihya Kodesh over here is not that it should be holy, because it is holy anyway. I said Tmura, and it became Tmura. I think what the mitzvah is to be noiheg with this behema, with the dinei Tmura. There's the din of how the Tmuras B'chor and the Tmuras, there's the Tmuras Shalom. Each behema has its peculiar dinim. The Rambam talks about them in Perek Gimel, the whole Perek Gimel in Hilchos Tmura, part of Perek Daled, and the Rambam is telling you that's the Torah Shabbat Peh. V'kvayis boy dinim mitzvah zub meseches Tmura. Kloima ech tiskayim, which behemoths should be chalak tushas Tmura, and which behemoths are not chalak tushas Tmura. Ech tiskayim, v'ech lo tiskayim, uma dina, and the peculiar din of each Tmura, and the peculiar din akrova of each Tmura. And to be noyeg b'matzav shel, that's the mitzvah. And then it's an amazing thing. And it's based on the fact that the Kedushas Tmura is memela. Or it's b'shas dalav. It depends upon how you learn whether Gimel, it's 2 days to Gimel Tmura. But that's what he has here. So that's this bikon. Next. So here I assume just that what's happening is that we're reinterpreting the Yihya is to be noyeg or kil b'matzav shel. And somehow, if you don't really have a verb of an imperative, it's also good enough to be a mitzvah, which the Medrash Hashem will talk about as we go on. We get to Tzadi Hey. Now, Peiches. HaMitzvah Hashmone Ushmonim, the 88th mitzvah. He Chetziva HaKohanim Le'echo Shoy Menochis. A separate Mitzvas Aseh to eat Shoy Menochis. V'hu Omroi Yis'ale V'noiseres Mimeno Yochlu Aaron Uvonov Matzos Te'ochel. Okay. So, the mitzvah is matzos te'ochel, but there's no reason to talk about that the mitzvah is to eat matzah, and for some reason, nusach ha-mitzvah, mitzvah tziva kohanim lechol shoy menochis, and that is what he leaves it at. V'losh sifro, and the two giso, two texts in the Rambam, the Ksav Yad Oxford and Ksav Yad Kapach, where the word matzis is in here, or just te'ochel mitzvah. The mitzvah, the verb, is the second person future tense. Te'ochel, that's the mitzvah. It should be eaten. Te'ochel mitzvah. Ki yotze boy yivomo yovo aleho mitzvah. See here, it is an amazing issue because this, after learning Shorish Yud Beis, this is a priori, it's not a candidate to be a mitzvah. Because Shorish Yud Beis, when you have the Maisa Oila, or the Maisa Chatos, or the Maisa Oshom, or the Maisa Shlomim, all those parts which are necessary in the Seder of each korban is not separate mitzvahs, but part of the broader mitzvah called Maisa Shlomim, or Maisa Chatos, or Maisa Oila. So similarly, in the Parsha, in Parshas Tzav of Zeis Teres HaMincha, it says, "V'noiseres mimeno yochlu Aaron avonav matzos te'ochel." So the Torah puts in the middle of Teres HaMincha, so it certainly shouldn't have been a separate mitzvah, according to the Ram's own principle in Shorish Yud Beis. It's a very serious problem. And you shouldn't say that the Teres HaChatos or the Teres HaOila is only until the termination of the Akrova, but the Achila is not part of it. V'horaya, that Miku Shtifa is, the Ram says, in Shorish Yud Beis, is part of the Teres HaChatos. And that which you do after the achila, how you deal with utensils that you did bishul kochim with, and there's a mitzvah. It's part, but it's not a separate mitzvah shtifa, but it's part of the Teres HaChatos. So similarly, this should be part of Teres HaMincha. So the Chayra, what he's saying as he finishes, he says, "V'etzaloyma shachil shoyim menochis kmo bi'ilas yavoma she mitzvas aseh lo inyan heter levad." That's the pshat. Okay. So, let me just tell you pshat and what the words say, and then we'll try to understand it. I mean, it's Yerushalmi that what's pshat in Teres Kohanim, that you could have imagined that this woman, the Yavoma, before she got married to your brother, she was mutter to you. So with the Mitzvas Aseh, and without a vlad, with no Yelodim, what happens is it reverts back to the state that it was beforehand. The hainu that it's only a heter. Yavomo yobo leo is a heter, but there's no mitzvah. It could be also that in Menachos, that the soilas before the hektish was mutter to make matzahs and to eat at your leisure. Comes the Torah says that it's hektish, and until Laktoras HaKoimitz Levoina, it's the Kodesh, and it's also to be nene. So maybe with the Laktoras HaKoimitz Levoina, it's only is Chayzla Heterishon, there's no mitzvah. And that's the Chayr, what it says is she lo inyan heter levad. It's not only in a heter, but it's a mitzvah. Okay. So that is what we have. Now, here we have it. Now next like this. It's like this. What exactly, so we're standing at a point, we don't understand why this should be a separate mitzvah. Teres ha-mincha v'chulei v'anoseres imenu yochlu aron uvon of matzahs te'ochel mochen kodesh b'chatzar olamoyed yochlua v'chulei kol zocher b'nei Aaron yochlenu chokol odoresechem v'ish Hashem kol asher yiga b'hem yikdosh. So it's only part of Teres ha-mincha. And it's very strange. If you would have told me that Achilas HaMincha is not part of Teres HaMincha, I would have told you that the pshat is because the separate mitzvah of Achilas Kochim, and the Ram says in Shiur Yud Beis that it's Kol HaKochim, and therefore it's a separate mitzvah. So I would have said that it's not only Kochim, but Mincha should also be included in it. Okay? That's what I would have said. That's what I would have said, but it's not true. That's not what the Ram is doing here. The Ram does the opposite, and the Ram quotes this mitzvah, Peiches, of Shoy Menachos, and then he quotes the mitzvah Achilas Kochim. So it's a separate mitzvah. So it's nothing to do with what he said in Shiur Yud Beis. So he's violating Shiur Yud Beis, and l'chayr there were two options in Shiur Yud Beis. Either you would put it together as part of Teres HaMincha, or you would have said just the opposite, that you put it together as part of the mitzvah of Achilas Kochim. And the Ram says the answer is neither. It's an amazing thing. So that's who we're standing. So let's now, and here is the Teres Kohanim Parshas Tzav. Matz teochel mitzvah, lefi shoyse bechlal hete v'nesra v'choze v'hutra, yochel tarzel etei rishon. Talmuloymo yevomo yovo aleho. And that Yushalmi Yevomis Perek Al V'cha Aleph explains Rabbi Yossi Poseh Masnita Mitzvahs Matzei Ochel Lefi Shoysa B'chlal Heta Ad Shelo Hikdisha. Exactly what I was telling you. Go to Loima, go to Lechol, Oichel, Loi Shelo Yoichel Loinoch. You had your option Hikdisha B'Nesra. Kol of Kumsa B'choz B'Hutra. with the Akovas HaKoimeitz, it's Chayzel HaTeir V'Hasher Yochel Tazel HaTeir Rishon. There's no mitzvah. Talmud Loima. Rotza Lechol Oichel Shelo Lochel Eino Oichel Talmud Loima. Matzos Teochel Mitzvah. Keitzav Yom Yolel Mitzvah. Exactly what I said. This is it. Yusham in Yevamis. L'chira. When the Teres Kohanim is saying mitzvah over here, is the purpose over here to say that it's a mitzvah in Minyan HaMitzvos, or the purpose over here is to say that it's not a heter? A priori, the purpose is to say that it's not a heter. Okay? So how and why should you be able to bring a raya that this is a mitzvah Minyan HaMitzvos? Okay? So, l'chera, what the Rambam says is the Matiki Ashmua Chachom Hizor B'Divreichem, and when the Matiki Ashmua used the word mitzvah, it means a mitzvah in Minyan HaMitzvos, even though it clearly is not the intent of what they're trying to say. And the Rambam did this once before, because the Rambam, we recall, the Rambam Mitzvah Yud Gimel, the Mitzvah's Tefillin, he says that the Gemara Menachos says that if you're not doing two, if you don't do, if there are two mitzvahs, you don't do one, you shouldn't do the other. The Gemara is not interested in Minyan HaMitzvos. The Gemara is just interested in whether you should put tefillin on. Okay? Correct? So, and yet still, the Rambam says we can derive from that it's a separate mitzvah. Here also, the Matiki Ashmua, when they wrote this Sefer, the purpose was not to tell us something about Minyan HaMitzvos, but the purpose was to tell us that it's not a heter, okay? But since they used the word mitzvah, we can derive it's a mitzvah Minyan HaMitzvos. It's an amazing thing. Okay, now, so the problem is, and what happens is, even though the Shiur Yud Beis tells you that what? That this is not a separate mitzvah. It's part of Teres HaMincha. But since the Matiki Ashmua came out with two mechilos and said mitzvah, even the Matiki Ashmua can decide to override the Shloshim if they make a statement that it's a mitzvah, and it's a mitzvah Minyan HaMitzvos. Okay? So that's what you have. Okay? So it means they can be Seiser and Shalom Yisrael even if it's against the Shloshim. Now, the problem is how to can this exactly. I'll explain to you what I mean. Because you look at the end of the Shiur Shlishi, the Rambam does something amazing. He quotes a Sefer. And he quotes a Sefer about a mitzvah l'shah. The end of Shiur Shlishi, he quotes, here it is, he says, Almo b'sifra, and Kapach is page Yud Zayin. Almo b'sifra, he says, Vu amroi ve'evium, he says like this, Lefisha kol zeh choyv b'midbar levad. The bringing of Shlomim, is only a choyv that you had to bring every behemoth chulin, and if you wanted to eat it, you had to bring it to the Mishkan, was only a choyv in midbar levad. V'omer ve'evium Hashem. Omer b'sifra ve'evium l'ashzu ve'evium zu Mitzvas Aseh. Elo shehi b'midbar levad. Kmo shebei b'mishnah Torah. Hete bosa taiva l'deiros. V'omer b'chol avas nafshecha toichal bosa. Okay. V'ilo hoyeroi limnois kol shehu min asug hazeh hoyer kol ma shenistava boi Moshe miyoim shenisna be'ada yoim ameis. Okay. So l'cheira, Shiur Shlishi tells you that the mitzvah shlomim is a mitzvah l'shah. Okay. The Sefer says mitzvah. So shouldn't we say that the Kabbalah of the Matiki Ashmur, the Pirush Makubal, that they say the Matiki Ashmur say it's a mitzvah, and so shouldn't that tell us that it's a mitzvah and override Shiur Shlishi? And the Ram doesn't do that. The Ram says that we maintain Shiur Shlishi. So I would say the following, okay? There are basically two types of shroshim, at least the way I want to say it in a simplistic fashion. There are shroshim which tell us the basic nature of a mitzvah. And that's the beginning, especially Shorish Beis and Shorish Gimel. And he's talking about Teira Tziv Olanu Moshe, that you need Teira Shemiksav. It's Teira. And also he says that Moirosho Kilas Yaakov is the chefs of a mitzvah, is a Moirosho L'Deres. So a mitzvah l'shah, or a mitzvah which is not part of Torah Shebiksav, is a stira to the etzem idea of mitzvahs. In such a situation, the Matiki Ashmur saying it's a mitzvah is basically saying that had not been a din, that a mitzvah l'shah is not minyan, it would be a bona fide mitzvah. And maybe, there's no lav of Oival Divinov. I'm not getting involved in that. It's Torah, but it's not Morosh Kilas Yaakov. It's not in the minyan. You have other mitzvahs, other shloshim. Don't define what a mitzvah is, but it's a question how you organize minyan mitzvahs. Are you moine fikir, or you're not moine fikir? Are you moine different possibilities, different ways of being mekayim the mitzvah, or you only moine the ikar mitzvah? Are you moine akdamus or not moine akdamus? Are you moine chelke mitzvah or not moine chelke mitzvah? So if it's only a question of organization, in which the Rambam, the master organizer, is setting up these shroshim, how to organize, how you decide what a mitzvah is, it could be that since it basically fits into the definition of mitzvah, but it's just a question of organization, maybe in such a case, the Matiki Ashmur can overrule and say that it's a mitzvah. It could be, and I'll leave you with that, and Mitzvah will talk about that next week. You could have, maybe let's leave it because I'm not sure about this. So this is where we're standing. It is an amazing thing that sometimes Chazal could say mitzvah, and it's not in the minyan mitzvahs, and the Rambam stuff quotes it in Shiur Shlishi. And other times, when he quotes mitzvah, it's a raya doch, it's a mitzvah mina mitzvahs. Hatzloch.